Well, many thanks for inviting me to the Applied Energy Symposium MITA+B to present our latest research. It's on the topic Beyond Energy, the policy-driven structural change process from lignite mining to sustainable bioeconomy. My name is Sandra Fenkos. I work at the Institute for Systems Analysis and Technology Evaluation at the Institute for Energy and Climate Research of the Forschungszentrum Jülich in Germany. As a background to our research, there's currently an immense and rapid policy-driven structural change process in Germany, which is driven by two concurrent national policies that are in place. And so one is the coal phase-out that was decided last year to phase out coal power in Germany by 2038. And at the same time, the bioeconomy, the national bioeconomy strategy that actually drives sort of a new economic sustainable leitmotif in Germany. This process is so dynamic because there's significant funding in Germany to drive this process by over 40 billion euros in the coming years. And obviously these policies are locally implemented. So in our research, we're looking at the Rheinische Revier, which is a region in Germany that is the largest lignite mining region in Europe that we take as a case study for our research. The project design is actually a transdisciplinary co-design approach where in the center of our research we have sort of the Stakes to Biolab as the stakeholder platform where we communicate, because in this process we want to involve the stakeholders in the region. We want to give them a platform for dialogue where we as scientists are in continuous dialogue with the stakeholders and have them participate also in our research process. And at the same time, we want to give the scientific community a platform to test current research, cutting-edge research at a very early stage against real-world stakeholder perceptions. So overall, the research objective is to systematically identify transformation trajectories for the Rheinische Revier that are at the same time ecologically desirable, economically feasible, and socially acceptable. And using the case study as a region, we want to then drive best practice options that can help guide transformation processes also in other regions. We are lucky to have actually a very unique research asset, which is the project partnership Living Lab Rheinisches Revier. So in addition to our Transform to Bio project, there is the project Bioeconomie Revier, which is actually more directly involved in the economic development and business promotion program that's politically steered in the region. And together we have a huge set of empirical data that we can use for the analyses. And so whereas the objective of Bioeconomie Revier is more on actually making the transformation work in the region, our objective in the Transform to Bio project is actually the idea of understanding how transformation work, how do the different stakeholders interact, how do they evaluate processes, what works well, what doesn't work, where are obstacles. And so the set of data that we can use for our analyses includes, for example, a large representative survey among the German public on the topic of bioeconomy. We have a data set of expert survey results. We have over 70 stakeholder sketches, idea sketches and project ideas for the transformation process in the Rheinische Revier. And we also have, for example, various transcripts of stakeholder workshops that have occurred in the region. As an analytical background, often technology development occurs in sort of a sequential order where there's first the techno-economic perspective, it becomes feasible, and then there's a sustainability assessment at some point. And then often very late in this process, there are challenges, for example, regarding stakeholder consensus or consumer acceptance, for example, or public acceptance. And to prevent this, we're actually proposing a novel approach where we want to have sort of an early integration of the stakeholders using a multi-stakeholder, multi-criteria decision analysis to actually describe transformation trajectories and then analyze stakeholder-based decision criteria to identify challenges at a much earlier phase in the process. So as one first step, we began developing regional transformation pathways that sort of are similar to scenarios for the region. And we use this development on the shared socioeconomic pathways that are used in the climate context. And so we translated them to the regional bioeconomy transformation by first doing a context translation where we used the climate change background and identified general trends in the bioeconomy. So that was the context translation. And in a second step, we translated the scale from global developments to regional developments. To describe the pathways, we needed to identify decision criteria or criteria to describe the pathways. And we also developed a set of key sample products that are of relevance in the region. And this identification of key sample products is the step that I would like to introduce in more detail in the coming slides. So it was an inter- and transdisciplinary derivation process consisting of 6 steps, where in the first step we identified sort of general concerns with the regional stakeholders in the region. We then participated in a constellation analysis where we sort of identified a target constellation for the year 2035. We then identified descriptive criteria that we wanted to consider. We then developed a template to collect potential products before we selected them. And then in the last step, we did a revision, so we sent it back out to the experts. But I will describe this in more detail now. So one first step was the identification of general concerns. So we conducted a focus group workshop among representatives of different stakeholder groups. So we had farmers, we had representatives from industry, regional development agency. We had also a church representative because they're often very much involved in sort of the concerns in rural regions. And we actually asked the question whether the stakeholders believed the transformation towards a sustainable bioeconomy is sort of, an opportunity, or whether it inheres more risks. In a second step, we then participated in a constellation analysis that was organized by the Bioeconomie Revier project, where in a moderated expert workshop, we first looked at the current state, so where are we today, and to then derive sort of an understanding of, in an ideal world, where do we want to be in the year 2035. And the idea was to then develop strategic decisions that need to be taken now in order to get to where we want to be. And as sort of the 4 squares show, one is sort of the economic side, the sectors that are involved. One is sort of the region, attractiveness in the region, the involvement of the population. Next step or a next concern is the regional policy that needs to sort of promote this process, and then the needed infrastructure that includes sort of science, sort of field labs, technology hubs, research that need to be in place. So in the next step, we then identify descriptive criteria. So if we look at bioeconomy technologies or processes, we usually have a biomass or a feedstock that needs to go into the value chain, into the process. That's then in the form of compounds. This whole value chain often falls into one or more sector categories. It could be building, it could be paper, pharmaceuticals, chemistry, or energy, and so on. And in these value chains, there are usually different stakeholder groups involved. A next concern was the degree of interconnectedness in the value chain. So the developments can result in entirely new value chains that need to be established, but it could also be a component that replaces sort of one step in an existing value chain. Another criterion is the technology readiness level. We also looked at the current as well as the expected future importance in the Rheinische Revier as the case study region. And we also looked at sort of the expected degree of social controversy or conflict potential. So what we then did, we developed a template that we sent out to all the researchers within the Transform to Bio project, but also to the focus lab leaders in the Bioeconomy Science Center, the coordinator of the Bioeconomy Review project, and the Bioeconomy Science Center office, and so to sort of a broad group of scientific experts on bioeconomy in the region. We asked them to fill in potential products. So in the end, we had a large template of possible products to be considered. And in another project meeting, we then selected in the end a set of 6 sample products based on the descriptive criteria that we developed and in an extended expert discussion. And then finally, we did a feedback round. So we sent our selection back into the group of scientific experts for feedback to whether this is actually a viable selection of sample products to use to describe the transformation pathway in the Rheinische Revier. So in the end, we looked at these 6 products that are shown on the right side, and the selected sample case products were made sure to meet a variety of criteria. So one criterion was that we only chose products that are at least of medium or high expected future importance in the Rheinische Revier. But we then chose a variety of products that are partly already well established, but partly not well established yet. We chose some that have already a high technology readiness level, some with a lower technology readiness level. We chose some with a low expected level of controversy, but also some with a medium or high level of expected controversy. And then we also made sure that we covered the different categories that are actually considered in the political and business development program, which is guided by the Zukunftsagentur Rheinisches Revier in the case study region. So we looked at sort of biofuels, biorefineries, bio-waste, paper, grass paper as an alternative, but also the building and construction sector, fertilizer and nutrient recycling. So we really wanted to cover a broad sort of variety of sectors and stakeholders. So some of the next steps of what we want to do with the selected sample products and technologies. One is we want to feed them into our transformation pathways and the modeling of their effects. So we want to do obviously an economic and environmental impact assessment. And we also want to use them in our future stakeholder attitudes and, for example, willingness to pay or to use of those products and technologies. So one is sort of the stakeholder group of farmers. So we want to understand, are they willing to adopt these technologies and sort of alternative uses of agricultural resources. This is one sort of topic that we're addressing. We want to work more closely with companies to understand sort of the economic potential of products and technologies. And we also do significant analyses with the citizens and the consumers in the region to understand their willingness to pay for the products and the acceptance of the different technologies. Well, many thanks. Here is still an overview of the project consortium. So obviously I'm not doing all of this research by myself. So I'm presenting this in the name of the whole project team. And I very much look forward to a discussion about the topic. Many thanks.